from Lakeside Loops, and today I'm going to show you how to make this cable heart hat. It is all crochet. Here's a list of the supplies that you'll need. I hope you enjoy the pattern. I am so excited about this pattern because I think it looks so much like knit, but you can achieve this look with crochet. So before we get started, I'm just going to give you a closer look at what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be creating first this stretchy band around the bottom of our toque, and then we're going to be working our toque up from there. So we're going to start with this, and I will show you how to achieve this look. And then this stitch that we use sort of surrounding the heart is a new stitch that I have completely fallen in love with because it lines up so perfectly. This video tutorial is to help with the written instructions. You can go to my blog, lakesideloops.com, where you can find the pattern for free, or you can also download the pattern from Ravelry and Etsy. So again, this video will just help show any of the parts you might have questions about, but for the specific details, row by row, round by round, you would want to have a look online for the pattern, and I'll put the links in the comments to show you where you can go to find all of that information. So to start out for row 1, and let me explain here again. So the hat is worked from bottom to top, and we work the trim of the hat first, and it's worked in rows. Then we start working in rounds and build up from there. So this first part that I'm going to go over with you is to create this look. It's very stretchy and it looks just like knit. I'm so excited about this technique. Let's get started. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be working up the smallest size of the hat just because it's the fastest. But if you wanted to make one of the larger sizes, again, just follow along with the written pattern. So I need to chain 6, one more, and now I need to slip stitch in the second chain from my hook. So right here, and we want to do loose slip stitches. We don't want to do them too tight. We're going to continue to slip stitch down the chain. We want to keep these slip stitches nice and loose because slip stitches, it's like a tongue twister. Slip stitches have a tendency to tighten up as we go, and so we want to make sure that these stay nice and loose because we need to be able to work into them for the next row. All right, so there's row 1. You can see our slip stitches. Now I'm going to put a stitch marker in just to help you see where we're going to be working into for the next round. So we're going to be working into the front loop, which is right here, for our next round. So I'm going to put a stitch marker right there to show where my front loop is, my last stitch of row 1. Alright, so for row 2, I've turned my work, I've chained 1, and now I'm going to slip stitch down this row, and I'm going to be working into the front loop of the stitch from the previous row. So technically it's the front loop when the previous row is facing you. When you turn, you're working into the back loop. So no matter how you word it, it's this one back here. So when your previous row is facing you, it's the front loop. Once you turn, technically it's the back loop. And so you kind of have to tilt your work a bit to see it. So right in there is where we're going to be working our slip stitch. I'm going to have to take this stitch marker out. And sometimes the first one especially is a little bit hard to get into. And again, just loose slip stitches. The first couple of rows are a little bit tricky, and then after that it becomes easier to work into that back loop, front loop, depending on how you're looking at it. So I'll work a few rows and come back and show you. It'll be a little easier to see at that point. Alright, so I've worked a couple of more rows, and I'm going to show you that again. So I've just completed this row. You can see my slip stitches here. And once we turn it around, we're going to be working into these front loops. Again, the previous row is facing me, so these are the front loops, but when we turn, they become the back loop. So I'm going to turn my work, chain one, and I'm going right into this loop back there. Whoop. So they're almost too easy to get into. I'm slipping right out. So they're a lot easier to get into once you work up a few rows. And again, just keep those slip stitches nice and loose. Make sure you count how many slip stitches you have in each row to make sure it's the same, because this last one tends to hide and it's easy to miss. So as you can see, it's very stretchy and it looks a lot like knit. So we're going to continue on this way until we've built our band all the way around, and then we're going to join the ends together. So to join my ends together to make this a circle, you should have your tail on this side. You're going to chain one and insert your hook, one stitch on this end and one stitch on that end, or one loop and one loop, and then yarn over and slip stitch. So into the next ones, yarn over, slip stitch, and you're going to go all the way down the end. Oop. And then once you get to the end, you're going to turn and be working around your hat this way. And now we're going to start building our hat up. But see how stretchy this is? And it looks just like knit. I'm so excited about it. All right, this is where it's going to get a little trickier, but I promise it'll all make sense and be worth it in the end. So the first thing you're going to do is insert your hook into the first stitch, and the stitches we're going to be working into are these loops right here. This loop, this loop, this loop that fall in between your ribs. So this loop right here at the top, that's what we're going to be working into. All right, so I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch. Those are air quotes. So I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through. So it's kind of like single crocheting 2 stitches together, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3. Now I'm going to insert my hook into that same stitch, that last stitch that I inserted my hook into, the previous stitch, and I'm going to insert my hook into my next stitch. Now I'm going to yarn over and pull through. So it is a single crochet 2 together, but because we're working into our previous stitch and our next stitch, it's not creating a decrease because we're working into our previous stitch and then the next stitch. And because we're doing it that way, it lines the stitch up with our rib, and you will see as we work the following rounds, all the stitches line up on top of each other. So it's perfect for color change patterns. Hint, hint. Stay tuned for more patterns to come. All right, so I'm just about to finish my first round, and I wanted to show you I don't join. So I'm going to continue to work right into my next round to save myself, or to save yourself, some confusion. If you're not really great with working with graphs and you want to be able to count your stitches leading up to the heart design, I would put a stitch marker in your last stitch, which is going to be this one right here that I'm going to show you. So you can see that your stitches all the way across line up with the ribs. This last stitch is going to line up with your join here. So I'm going to insert my hook into my previous stitch, and I'm going to insert it into the first stitch that I made. That is my last stitch. And now I'm going to put a stitch marker instead of putting it in the stitch, I'm going to put it kind of around the stitch, because this is what I want to remember. This is my last stitch. Ooh, that was loud. And again, we're just going to work in a continuous circle all the way around. That way we won't have any seam at the back of our hat other than this one. I'm leading up to the part where we're going to begin our heart design, and I've started to work over my contrasting color just to lock it in place and get it ready for when I need it. I've just done a few stitches here. My last stitch in my base color, I'm going to finish that stitch using my contrasting color so that I have it ready to go for when I need it for the next stitch. So this is my last stitch in my base color before starting the heart. I'm going to finish it using my contrasting color, and that way I have my contrasting color ready to go for my next 2 stitches. So the pattern says to front post half double crochet around the next 2 stitches. So this stitch and this stitch. So 1. Now for the second one, I'm going to make sure that my my base color is over my hook and then comes back down again. So I'm trying to get you to see that a little bit better. Put it over my hook, and then I'm going to pull it down so that I can get back around the other side of my post, and I've just locked it in place. I'm going to make sure that it's loose enough that when someone's wearing the hat, it won't be too tight. There's room to stretch when it's worn. And now to complete this front post half double crochet, I'm going to use my base color again, because I'm going to need that for my next stitch. So whatever stitch you're on, you finish the stitch using whatever color yarn you need next. Now I have my base color ready to go for my next stitch. My contrasting color I've pulled behind my round, and I'm going to work over top of it to lock it in place. Now that that's locked in place, I can either continue to work over it a couple of more times and cut it, and then when I come back around to my heart design, do exactly what I did here and just work over it a few times before switching colors. Or what I do is I just leave it, work around my hat, and then when I come back over here, I pull it over. I lock it in place just a stitch or 2 before I need it, and then I use it. When I pull it back over, I make sure to leave enough slack so that when the hat's worn, it can stretch. This method is a lot messier, but it's a lot faster. It's just the way that I do it. Like I said, the other option is to cut it as you go, and then you can just weave these ends in when you're finished. All right, so if you've never done a cable before, I'm going to go over this part with you. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. So this last stitch in our base color and this first stitch in our contrasting color, we're going to skip those. So we're going to work a front post double crochet around this stitch and this stitch. So I've yarned over. I'm going to work front post double crochet, yarned over again, and another front post double crochet. Now we're going to go back to the 2 stitches that we skipped. So this last stitch in our base color and our first stitch of our contrasting color. We're going to work our front post double crochet around our first skipped stitch. So this stitch, oops, in our base color. Now we're going to work a front post double crochet around our second skip stitch, which is this stitch here in our contrasting color. And now you've made a cable. So now that we've done those twists, we're going to work a front post half double crochet around the next stitch. So we have worked around this stitch. This is our next stitch. Before we do that, we're going to grab our base color because we're going to need to finish this stitch using our base color. So I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to begin to put my hook around the post, but I'm going to make sure that this base color yarn is wrapped over my hook and then comes back down again so that we can lock it behind our stitch. So show you here, I've locked in our base color yarn, and I'm making sure that there's some slack there so that our design doesn't become smushed together because this yarn's too tight in the background. We want to leave room for it to stretch when someone's wearing it. So we've locked that in, and instead of finishing this front post half double crochet with our contrasting color, we're going to pick our base color back up and finish our stitch using that. Now I'm going to grab my contrasting, throw it behind my round, and I'm going to work my next stitch right over top of it, locking it in place. So now it's locked in for next time when I pull it back over. So just to show you how this is progressing, once I switch back to the base color, I always make sure that I'm tucking in my contrasting color yarn behind that first base color stitch, just so it's locked in for the next time for when I swing it back around this way. As you can see, I haven't been tucking my stitches in behind my rounds very well. Everything's just kind of hanging out back here and it probably looks a little bit messy to some. For me, to be honest, I never tuck these in. I never do anything with them. I just sort of leave them hanging out, and I don't really mind it when I'm wearing my toques, and my kids have never complained about it. If it bothers you, which I'm sure it bothers some, you can always cut this after you're all done and then weave the ends in on either side, or as you go, once you could work a couple of extra stitches over this contrasting color and then cut it, and then when you come back around, did you like that sound effect? And then once you come back around the other side, you could just bring that contrasting color in, work a few stitches over it, and then use it again, rather than having this overhang or having to weave in all the ends when you're done. So there's a couple of different ideas to handle that mess. Or another idea that I've seen people do, if they line their hats, then this obviously is a non-issue. And you could line this hat because it's quite stretchy, and as you can see, it's not super duper thick. Whenever I'm done a design like this, it's always so nice to be able to just work mindlessly in the round again and not have to worry about the design. Also, I'm always so excited to see how it turned out once I start working regular rows again, because that's when you really get to see the shape. So I just wanted to show you that when you are working your stitches above your heart design, it's going to feel like you almost have too many stitches that you're working in above the heart. And that's just because the cable heart design is a little bit tighter than the regular stitches because of the twists. So you probably already noticed, or we've already talked about, how these first couple of rows created a bit of puckering. Once we started the cable design, you're going to see that same puckering or waviness once we start working our regular rows above the heart again. And don't worry about that, it works itself out when the hat's worn and once it's laid flat for a while. I've noticed it tends to, the waviness seems to go away with that as well. So just work all the way around, make sure your stitch count stays the same and you're not missing any stitches like these ones that are tucked in behind here. All right, so once you've completed your heart and you've worked a couple of rows above it, it may seem a little wavy or bumpy up here because the cables sort of suck in our hat and then our regular stitches aren't as tight as the crisscrosses. So this part may be a little bumpy, same with down here, but when the hat is worn, that stretches itself out, so you don't have to worry about it. Also once, oops, gosh. Also once it's laid flat for a while, like this one has, and it's already started to sort of flatten itself out and work itself out. So don't worry about that too much, that's normal if yours is doing the wave. So for the decrease, when it says to skip a stitch, what I mean is instead of working into our previous stitch and the next stitch we're going to skip this one. We're going to go straight into our next stitch, and then the next one after that to complete our stitch. So you'll see there's a bit of a hole there. So the stitch before it worked into the previous stitch and the stitch we were on. This stitch, instead of working into the previous stitch, is the stitch it's on and the next one. And then we just continue until it says to skip again. So once you're finished working up all the rounds, there's very clearly a hole at the top of your hat. So what we're going to do is cut off a long end, and we're going to weave it in and out every couple of stitches all the way around. I just use my crochet hook to do this. I just grab the yarn, bring it through a stitch to the inside, back to the outside. Again, just every couple of stitches. You don't have to be really specific about it. And then once I've done that, I just pull, and it closes up the top of the hat for me. Then I can tie it in a good knot and then pull this in to the inside of my hat. Another trick with the pom-pom that I'll tell you is to, when you're making your pom-pom using your pom-pom maker, tie 2 strands of yarn around it to secure it. That will make it extra secure, but also it helps when you are attaching your pom-pom to have more ends to attach it. You can sort of pull one through over here, one here, one here, and one here, and it just makes it extra solid on the top. Now you can attach a faux fur pom-pom or a yarn pom-pom, whichever look you prefer, and you're ready to go. Thank you so much for watching this video tutorial. I hope that it helped you with the pattern. I hope you enjoyed the pattern. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. It's lakesideloops@gmail.com. And I would love to see pictures of your finished hat or your work in progress. You can find me at Lakeside Loops on all social media. Thank you. Bye guys.